The sun blazed over the barren landscape, a swirling mass of red dust and scorched earth. On a distant, isolated planet, the harsh conditions made survival a constant challenge. The air crackled with static, charged with radiation storms that would make even the toughest soldiers think twice. Yet the humans had survived here. Krex, an elite soldier of the Garen Empire, stood on the edge of the drop zone, surveying the desolate terrain. His squad was part of a high-priority mission to wipe out a small group of human resistance fighters on this forsaken planet. The humans were rumored to be nothing more than a ragtag band of survivors with outdated technology. The Garen Empire had never faced significant trouble from any human forces, so this mission should have been straightforward. Krex gripped the hilt of his plasma rifle, his visor reflecting the harsh rays of the alien sun. His troops, clad in advanced exo-armor, were ready to deploy. They had been briefed. No survivors. No mercy! The humans, the reports claimed, had no real fighting chance. Krex felt a cold smile form beneath his helmet. The resistance wouldn't stand a chance against the might of the Garen Empire's elite forces. As the transport ship descended through the atmosphere, the air hummed with the sound of energy shields engaging. Outside, the planet's sky rumbled with the static of a powerful radiation storm, its glowing clouds swirling like a living thing. Krex's squad didn't flinch. They had been through worse, trained for these exact conditions. The ship touched down with a thud, sending up a storm of dust and debris. "Remember, no survivors." Krex's commanding officer's voice crackled through his comms as the hatch of the transport opened. The alien soldiers marched out, their boots crunching on the cracked earth. The terrain here was alien to them. Extreme heat, unpredictable radiation bursts, and an atmosphere that made every breath feel like fire. But for the humans, this was home. They had survived here for years, hidden away from the eyes of their invaders. Krex couldn't understand it. How had they lasted so long in these conditions? But soon he would find out. As they moved deeper into the planet's desolate wilderness, Krex's infrared sensors picked up signs of movement. Human heat signatures. The resistance had already noticed the alien presence. Krex signaled to his squad and they readied their weapons, cloaking their approach. The humans, despite their disadvantage, were not unaware. Suddenly, the air seemed to vibrate with tension. From behind a cluster of rocks and debris, a group of human soldiers emerged. They were barely more than a handful, their uniforms tattered and their weapons old. But their eyes burned with a fierce determination. Krex's squad paused, surprised by how organized they looked despite their small numbers. The humans, armed with nothing but rudimentary rifles and makeshift gear, stood their ground without hesitation. They were outgunned and outnumbered, yet there was no sign of fear in their faces. Krex narrowed his eyes, unable to believe what he was seeing. How could these weak humans dare to stand against the might of the Garen Empire? "Ready weapons," Krex ordered. His voice was calm, but there was an edge of irritation. This was supposed to be easy. One of the human soldiers, the leader perhaps, stepped forward. His gaze locked onto Krex's helmet. The human's weapon was small, nothing compared to the plasma rifles or energy blasters the alien forces wielded. Yet the human didn't flinch. The human leader spoke with a tone that carried through the static of the radiation storm. "We fight for Earth, and we will never surrender." The words echoed in the quiet air. Krex felt a strange sensation. Was it a challenge? No, this was simply a human's last defiance before his inevitable death. Krex's skepticism hardened into certainty. The humans would fall. With a wave of his hand, Krex signaled to his squad. They would break this resistance in seconds. The battle would be over quickly. His troops opened fire, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts that tore into the earth. But to his shock, the humans didn't run. They returned fire with startling accuracy, hitting alien armor in weak spots. Despite being outgunned and outmatched in terms of technology, the humans fought with a resilience that took Krex off guard. They moved with a fluidity and precision he hadn't expected from such primitive fighters. Their primitive weapons, crafted from scrap metal and scavenged tech, seemed almost laughable in comparison to the Garen Empire's high-tech arsenal. But their aim was true. Their spirit was unbreakable. Krex's squad began to stumble. For the first time, the mighty Garen soldiers found themselves struggling. The humans, though vastly outnumbered, fought as though they had nothing left to lose. Each shot they fired seemed to find its mark. The battlefield was chaos, with debris flying, smoke rising in thick clouds, and the sound of gunfire and explosions filling the air. Krex tightened his grip on his plasma rifle. This mission was supposed to be a slaughter, but instead it was turning into something far more dangerous. As the battle raged on, Krex couldn't help but wonder how. How are they still standing? His soldiers, confident just moments ago, now showed signs of doubt. This wasn't just a fight for survival for these humans. This was something deeper, something far more dangerous. And Krex would soon learn. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The tension in the air was thick as the battle raged on. Krex, his armor shimmering under the heat of the alien sun, watched as his squad unleashed wave after wave of high-powered plasma fire. The Garen soldiers moved with precision, their weapons cutting through the air like lightning, their blasters charged with energy, sending explosive bolts crashing into the earth around the human resistance. But the humans, they didn't flinch. They were everywhere, moving like shadows through the wreckage, taking cover and then striking back from unexpected angles. They were fighting with a ferocity that surprised Krex. Their strategy was clear, hit and run, always keeping the Garan forces off balance. The humans' weapons, though primitive compared to the Garan's plasma rifles, were deadlier than Krex had imagined. The makeshift rifles were remarkably accurate, and each shot seemed to find its target. Krex's own soldiers, with all their superior technology, were struggling to keep up. Some of them had already been hit, their armor damaged by the humans' well-aimed shots. They had underestimated their enemy. Krex narrowed his eyes as he scanned the battlefield. There at the front, the human leader was taking charge. He was tall and lean, his face marked with dirt and sweat, but his movements were precise, commanding. Krex could tell this man was no ordinary fighter. He had to be eliminated. With a cold calculation, Krex raised his rifle and aimed at the human leader. One shot was all it would take. His enhanced targeting systems locked onto the human's chest. The trigger pulled with a deadly click. A plasma bolt shot out, glowing brightly as it cut through the air. The shot hit its mark, and for a moment, Krex was certain it was over. The human leader should have fallen, his body torn apart by the concentrated blast. But to his shock, the human didn't collapse. Instead, he stumbled but quickly regained his footing. His armor, battered but intact, had absorbed the brunt of the blast. In a blur of motion, the human leader rose and returned fire with incredible speed and precision. The shot grazed Krex's shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through his body. He was stunned. How had the human survived such a powerful attack? Krex's heart raced as he realized he had underestimated the humans once again. They weren't weak. They weren't the prey he thought they were. There was something unbreakable about them, something that defied the Garen Empire's understanding of war. He had seen many battles, fought against countless species, but this was different. For the first time, Krex felt a strange mix of frustration and admiration. The human leader, with his ragtag squad, had withstood what should have been a lethal blow. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting with everything they had, and that was something Krex hadn't expected. As Krex's squad adjusted their tactics, moving in for the kill, he found himself watching the humans more closely. They fought with a kind of desperation, but there was also something else, a fierce pride. They weren't just trying to win, they were determined to protect something, to hold on to their home, their planet. And Krex couldn't help but respect that. The battle was far from over, but Krex's perception of his enemy had changed. These humans weren't just another insignificant species. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors, and they would not go down easily. The air was thick with smoke as the battle raged on, the clash of advanced alien technology against human determination echoing across the desolate landscape. Krex stood in the midst of the chaos, his mind racing. His team, once confident in their ability to wipe out the human resistance, was now facing a growing number of unexpected casualties. His soldiers, experienced and highly trained, were beginning to question the ease of their mission. One by one, the Garen soldiers fell, hit by the humans' sharp-shooting precision or trapped by their ingenious traps. Krex had watched as one of his own was struck by a human's seemingly primitive grenade, which exploded in a brilliant flash, sending debris everywhere. The blast should have been enough to take the soldier down, but to Krex's shock, The soldier staggered back to his feet, grimacing but alive. The humans. They weren't dying. They were resilient. Every time it seemed like the humans had been defeated, they got back up. Even those who had been shot or wounded badly would push through their pain, refusing to surrender. Krex's soldiers, who had expected the humans to break easily, now found themselves questioning their initial assessment. The humans fought with an intensity they hadn't anticipated, and it was wearing down the Garon forces. As Krex advanced, a movement in the distance caught his attention. A human soldier, one he had seen fall just moments before, was limping back into the fray. Blood covered his uniform, his face pale from the injury, but his eyes were filled with fire. He was smiling, almost as if he had been revived by his wounds. The smile was not one of arrogance, but of pure determination. Krex watched, stunned, as the soldier, despite his injuries, picked up his weapon and charged back into the fight. He fought as if there was no other option. To him, death was not an answer. It was as if the human mindset was one that never gave up, never accepted defeat. Krex's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the depth of what he was witnessing. In all his years of battle, he had never seen anything like this. Not one of the countless species he had fought against had ever fought so fiercely, so relentlessly. Humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting with every ounce of their being, for their planet, their families, their future. For a moment, Krex's confidence began to crack. He had always believed in the superiority of his own species. The Garan Empire had conquered countless worlds, and they had never been challenged like this. But now, standing on this war-torn planet, he felt a doubt creeping into his mind. The humans were not weak as they had been portrayed. They were strong in a way he had never encountered before. They had something the Garan soldiers didn't: resolve. The realization hit Krex like a shockwave. These humans were not just another species to be crushed under the heel of the Garan Empire. They were a force to be reckoned with. The strength of their will, their resilience, was a weapon in itself. Krex found himself questioning everything he had ever believed about the humans. Were they truly the weak species the Garan Empire had so confidently dismissed? Or had they simply been underestimated? The more Krex observed, the more he realized that the human spirit could not be easily broken. With every wounded human who returned to the fight, with every fierce retort, Krex's admiration grew. They weren't giving up. They didn't know how to give up. And that, Krex realized, was something he would never forget. The battle was far from over, but the momentum had shifted. Krex's once confident squad was now on the defensive, retreating under the relentless assault of the human resistance. His soldiers, trained in the art of warfare and armed with advanced weaponry, were faltering. The humans, who had once seemed like an easy target, were now pushing forward with an unrelenting force that they could not match. Krex's pulse quickened as he watched his squad fall back, their once powerful weapons barely holding the line. It was a shocking sight. How were the humans doing this? They were outgunned, outnumbered, yet they fought with a tenacity that seemed to defy all logic. In the midst of the chaos, Krex found himself isolated in an area now firmly under human control. The tide of battle had shifted so drastically that even his tactical support couldn't assist him anymore. He could see the humans, these once weak creatures, working in unison to strengthen their defenses. Despite the barrage of alien fire, they were not retreating. Instead, they were fortifying their position, repairing barriers, and setting up even more traps. It was as if they had an endless well of energy and determination that could not be drained. Krex couldn't believe his eyes. How could they keep going like this? His own soldiers, battle-hardened and experienced, were starting to doubt themselves. The humans, on the other hand, seemed to only grow stronger with each passing moment. With a sense of frustration and confusion, Krex pushed his way through the smoke and debris, making his way to the human leader, the one who had survived his direct assault. He confronted the man, his voice sharp with disbelief. "How do you do it?" Krex demanded. "How can you keep fighting? Your soldiers fall, your people are dying, yet you refuse to give up. What is it that makes you so unkillable?" The human leader looked at Krex for a long moment. His eyes, though tired, carried the weight of someone who had seen death and destruction, yet still refused to bow. Then he spoke, his voice calm but unwavering. "It's not our bodies that make us unkillable," he said quietly. "It's our will. our resolve. We don't give up because we don't have a choice. This is our home. Our families are here. We fight because we have to, not because we want to. And even when it seems impossible, even when everything is against us, we never stop fighting. That's what makes us who we are. Krex felt a chill run through him. The human's words echoed in his mind, unsettling him. He had always thought that physical strength was what made a species formidable, that advanced technology and weaponry would decide the outcome of a war. But what the human was saying went against everything he had ever believed. This will to survive, to never surrender, was something Krex had never encountered before. As the human leader's words sank in, Krex felt a shift within himself. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and he suddenly saw the humans for what they truly were. Not just a weak, primitive species, but a force that could not be crushed by mere weapons or technology. It was their mindset, their mental and emotional resilience that made them unstoppable. Krex looked around at the human fighters, who continued to work tirelessly despite the odds. Their faces were smeared with dirt, their bodies bruised and battered, but their eyes gleamed with an unwavering fire. These humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something much deeper. And that, Krex realized, was the key to their strength. For the first time, he understood. The humans had something no alien species could ever replicate, a spirit that could not be broken. They were not just fighting a war. They were fighting to live. The battle had raged on for hours, but now, Krex found himself standing alone amidst the ruins of his fallen comrades. His elite strike force, once confident in their power and superiority, was utterly defeated. The alien forces had been overwhelmed by the humans' relentless drive and unyielding determination. Krex stood still, watching the last of his squad retreat into the distance. His once strong comrades, who had always held the belief that no one could stand against the might of their empire, were now scattered and broken. It was clear to Krex that the fight was over. He had been defeated, not by weapons, not by technology, but by something much stronger, the spirit of the humans. With a deep, heavy breath, Krex did something he never imagined he would do. He lowered his weapon. The energy of the battlefield seemed to shift as the hum of gunfire and explosions began to quiet. For the first time in the entire conflict, the noise seemed to fade into the background. His eyes locked on the approaching human squad, a mix of confusion, caution, and curiosity in their gazes. The humans slowed their advance, unsure of Krex's intentions. For a moment, it seemed as if the entire battlefield held its breath. Krex's decision to lower his weapon sent a clear message. He was no longer their enemy. One of the human leaders stepped forward cautiously. The two stood there for a long moment, staring at each other. There was no animosity in Krex's eyes now, only exhaustion and something else. An understanding. "I can't fight for them anymore," Krex said quietly, his voice hoarse with emotion. "The Empire, it's wrong. They don't understand what you are, what you really are. You're not weak. You're stronger than anything I've ever known. I see now that it's not your weapons or your technology that makes you powerful. It's your will, your determination to survive. That's what has defeated us." The human leader listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Then, after a moment of silence, he nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. "It's not our weapons or our technology that make us strong. It's our ability to never give up, no matter what. And it's something you'll never understand until you've seen it yourself." Krex nodded, realizing that the human was right. He had come to understand their strength, not just in battle, but in their very nature. The humans had an unbreakable will to survive, to fight for their home and loved ones no matter the odds. This resilience had not only defeated him, but had crushed everything he thought he knew about strength and power. Krex's eyes softened as he gazed at the human leader. He made a vow that he could never have imagined speaking just hours ago. "I'll protect you," he said, his voice steady. "I will protect your people from any further attacks. I can no longer fight for an empire that doesn't value what makes you truly powerful. I will stand with you." The human leader regarded him for a moment, then extended a hand. Krex took it without hesitation, a symbol of the new alliance that had been forged in the heat of battle. The moment marked the end of an era for Krex. He was no longer a soldier of a cruel empire, but an ally to the humans who had taught him the true meaning of strength. Ending message. As Krex stood with the human resistance, the sun began to set behind them, casting long shadows over the battlefield. The war was over, but the lesson had just begun. Humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their advanced weaponry. It was their unyielding spirit, their refusal to ever give up, no matter the odds. Krex, now a changed man, looked at the humans around him with respect. He had once seen them as weak and insignificant, but now he saw them for what they truly were, an unstoppable force driven by the most powerful weapon in the universe, the will to survive. The story ended with the powerful realization that no matter how overwhelming the odds, the human spirit could never be broken, and that, Krex understood, was the greatest weapon of all.